What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Family Fridays here on the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Folks, I am excited. I know I always say that, but I genuinely am. I really love these conversations that I get to have with folks. I love meeting new people. I love bringing these folks that I've met to you, the listener, so that you can hear their perspectives. That's what we're trying to bring here on the Gravity Podcast. How do we identify our foundations? How do we cut through all the noise and chaos in this world and know what our core values are, know what the things that are worth fighting for are, so that we don't get carried away and caught up in fights that honestly aren't worth it. Today on Family Fridays, we're doing something. I guess we have done this before. I'm sitting there chewing on. Have we ever done this before? Is this a first? It's not a first. But we're bringing a husband and wife team on. You know what is a first? Is in this episode, the woman, the wife in this husband-wife team is the first responder, is the police officer. And her husband, obviously, is the spouse of the first responder. It is a great story. I don't know where you met your spouse. If you're listening and you're married, I don't know where you met your spouse, but did anyone meet their spouse in the Target Loss Prevention Office? I mean, like that just sounds like it's a good story, right? Jason and Lindsay Long have a remarkable story of how they met, how they courted, getting married and starting a family, and then maybe one of the worst days you can possibly have as a police officer of having a gun pulled on you and being in a lethal force encounter. And Lindsay fought through it and survived to tell the story. Just absolutely interesting perspectives that she has, both when we put ourselves in the story as she tells it, and then as we hear the aftermath and what they did to work through it. But before we get into the interview, folks, I want to talk about Service Peace Warriors. Service Peace Warriors is a 501c3 nonprofit that's dedicated to our nation's heroes. That's right, the men and women that are returning with war-related PTSD or other injuries. Service Peace Warriors has their back. They're raising all the money. They're training both the service animal and the veteran, and they're equipping the veteran with the healing power of a service animal. Folks, you've heard me talk about them before, but if you haven't checked out their website, do it now, servicepeacewarriors.org. With that, folks, let's get into this interview with Jason and Lindsay. Jason and Lindsay, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, I'm excited for this conversation. It's a long wait. You all have been patient. We connected at a conference here in the Tri-Cities where you all spoke for Behind the Badge. Loved hearing your story. And I also love the way you guys play off of each other. I love the banter that you all have. I think it's a powerful story when you can bring a husband and wife together to talk about really any topic, whether it be specifically marriage or when you're getting into the first responder conversations of the impact of the job, or like yours, Lindsay, where it gets into a critical incident. I'm excited for us to get into this. This is going to be good. Hey, one of the things my wife and I, when we meet a new couple, we oftentimes ask them for their story, and we call it the Chris and Jaimie story. Can you all give us the Jason and Lindsay story?
Well, it depends on whose version you want.
Yeah, I mean, there's Lindsay and there's the truth. So yeah.
That's true. That's true. And then there's somewhere in the middle. There's somewhere in the middle. So I'll let you start.
Me start, okay. So first time I met Lindsay, I was working at Target. I was a loss prevention officer there. I worked undercover, caught shoplifters, all that. And this is back in the day where, you could get a little physical with people when you were stopping them. You can't do that anymore. But I'd catch shoplifters, I'd bring them in my office, I'd process them, and I'd call the police to come take them away. And who shows up? Lindsay. And,
hey.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. She showed up in the uniform. The whole uniform thing, it's men and women. It's not just dudes that come in. The girls are like, "Ooh, a man in uniform." No, ladies look good in uniform too. I'm just saying. But she came in, and it was funny. The guy that I was working with at the time was, hey, let me buy you lunch, and talking to her and stuff like that. And it was weird. I was like, man, felt some sort of way, right? I was like, I want to talk to her. I have no game whatsoever, like none when it comes to women. It's horrible. And she'll kind of tell you a little more about that. I I talked to her. She come in quite a bit, and I actually was one of the top producing assets protection people in my whole area. So she thinks I just kind of made it up and planted stuff on people. So she'd come in and see me.
I do.
But I might have. I don't know. Whatever. It worked. But yeah, she'd come. She'd pick up my shoplifters, and I'd try and talk and do whatever I could to flirt, but it didn't work out so well. But yeah, after a while, I talked about her with my coworkers and stuff. So my supervisor at the time was a really good friend of mine, still is. And I'd be like, yeah, McCall, that's her maiden name, Officer McCall. She's kind of cute. I like that. It's nice. And so they'd kind of tease me a little bit and like, why don't you ask her out? And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I'm not good with that. And so they tease me a little bit. And so I'd be like, you know what? Next time she comes, I'm gonna ask her out, and we'll see what happens. And so she'd come and they'd be all like pressed up against the door, looking through the peephole out the door, see what officer was coming up. And they'd be like, oh, it's McCall. And I'm like, oh no, I gotta do this now.
The shoplifter sitting there in handcuffs going, what's going on?
Exactly.
Yeah. They don't care about you. Don't worry about it. But so we come in and we do our jobs, they process everybody and stuff. I'd walk her out to her car. And I remember her looking at me like, why are you walking me to my car? I'm a tactically trained, armed police officer walking to my squad car. So this kind of plays out in the rest of our lives. It pops up once in a while, but I was raised very traditional. I was raised by a single mother. I open the door for women. I do all the polite things that a gentleman's supposed to do, walk them out to their car. That's what a gentleman does. So I'm in that mode, so I'm walking her out to her car thinking I'm being like, the protective man. She needs none of that. And I didn't know this, but she can see all my coworkers like peeking around the side of the building, trying to watch to see if I finally ask her out. And so I'm like, hey, you want to go grab coffee sometime? And she looks at me and she goes, I don't drink coffee. Shut me down. I was done. I was like, so
for the man that doesn't got game, it's like, that was my best line.
Yeah, that's all I've got.
All right, keep going.
So yeah, she shuts me down, and time passes and stuff, and she's still coming in. And I noticed she'd come in a lot more than the other officers, and she just kind of hang out. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is a good sign, right? So I've got a goldfish brain. I don't remember more than like 3 seconds. It's horrible. But so what do? I'm like, hey, you want to go grab coffee sometime?
I don't drink coffee.
I don't drink coffee. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, they've got tea and sodas. I don't know.
Water? I don't know. I mean,
so she shuts me down again. I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm done at that point, right? I'll like try and flirt with her, do whatever I can when she comes in, but I'm not doing this again. And I'm out with a friend of mine. We go out to this bar. It's like little did I know, it was like the cop bar in the area.
It's the unofficial.
Unofficial, yeah. So I'm sitting there and I see one of the other officers that I know that I was friendly with. So I start chatting with him. We're talking, and he's like, so, what's up with you and McCall? You ever ask her out or anything? I'm like, man, I don't know. She probably thinks I'm, there's some few choice words because I never asked her out or asked for her phone number or anything like that. Well, she's standing behind me. And she's like,
because people, they call him the target guy.
Yeah, I was the target guy.
And so I heard one of the other officers I was hanging out with, because we were out for a birthday. They're like, hey, the target guy is here. So then here I come standing behind him.
Yeah. And I'm like, she probably thinks I'm a punk because I've never asked her out. She's like, yes. And I'm like, oh God.
And now we're having a conversation.
Yeah. Well, I had a couple of drinks. So,
me being completely just humiliated. I'm like, yeah, so can I have your number then? She gave it to me. We went out a few times, kind of hung out. It was nice. But nothing really clicked, right? It was cool to hang out with her. We were friendly, I guess. Yeah. But nothing was there. So I was just like, I talked to my friend, my supervisor, right? I talked to her and I'm like, look, I think she's just using me for free meals.
God bless her if she is. I got 4 daughters, so yeah.
Right?
I can admit that.
So I kind of shut it down. I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'll move on, and just it is what it is. And what, about 6 months goes by?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 months goes by. I get a text from her. What was it? Just basically,
Just, hey, how you doing?
What
It's
are you
been
up
a
to?
while. Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, hey, I hadn't thought about you in a minute. So I call her. Apparently they're not supposed to do that. I didn't know. They're supposed to text back. But I call her up and she's like, hi.
Weirdo.
Yeah.
Right. Awkward.
Right. We talked for a little bit, and I'm like, hey, some friends and I are going out to trivia night at this pizza place, right? You want to come? And she's like, I guess, sure. So she comes with us. We had a blast, right? Had a really good time at trivia night, and it never stopped from there.
We've been together ever since.
It's she fell head over heels in love with me, and I don't blame her. I mean, look at me. I'm amazing.
Okay, man, it's an amazing kid.
Okay, now.
Yeah, let's get into the truth, Lindsay. Let's get into
the truth. He is right. We did meet on the job. And I would come in the store, and I wasn't there a lot. And I was thinking, like, is this guy just really this good at his job, or is he kind of making things up? Because I knew the other employees before Jason had gotten there. And so they would always say, oh, he likes you, he likes you. I was like, well, that's odd, because he never says anything to me when I'm in the office. He just stares at me, and it gets a little awkward.
That's my game right there.
Right, that. So he knows. See,
you got it. Yeah.
Jason, she's a cop. She's going to get a no contact order against you. Is the problem?
I didn't know these things.
Okay, so what you just did will play into a comment I'm going to make shortly. Okay, so and I just was like, okay, but then I started conversation with him because I saw him wearing Chuck Taylors one day. And I love Chuck Taylors, and we found out we were both born in the Bay Area. So he's from Oakland, I'm from Vallejo. They're close to each other. And then we also found out that we lived in the same smaller city, Fremont, California, like 3 or 4 years apart, and we lived directly across the street.
Like, I can see her apartment from mine.
And so I was like, wow, so it was nice. It was just kind of comfortable. Like, I still have family in California, so does he. So we, started talking about that. And then he did, ask the whole coffee thing. So yes, I said, no, I don't drink coffee. But, and I've told him this before. At the time, I was trying to get over somebody else. So it was like, it was nice to have the attention from Jason, but I wasn't giving him like full attention because, you're doing the silly in your 20s, holding out hope thing, and it just never came to fruition. So, and then I say to my mom one day, I said, Mom, there's this white guy that stares at me at work. I don't know what that means in white boy flirt. I'm just going to be honest, because it's not necessarily the fact that the issue wasn't that he was white, because I grew up outside of Atlanta, and just Southern dudes overall just have swagger. It doesn't matter, what their background, if they want to talk to a girl, they'll come over and talk. But Jason wasn't doing that. So the vibe he was giving me is, and I said this to my mom, I've seen the Silence of the Lambs. So he's not going to ask me to moisturize my pretty brown skin to put me in a van. Like, that's not.
It does what it's told.
Yeah, and I said, so when you stared into the camera the way you did, Jason, that's how I saw it. I was like, what does he want? Why doesn't he use his words?
Call 25. I need a second unit at the shoplift. Priority.
Yeah. So, and I was like, I just don't know where to go with this. So, he's right. We went out a couple of times, and it just didn't click. And then he stopped calling me. And then I had a very honest conversation with my best friend, who basically told me I wasn't being smart about my dating choices, and that Jason was a nice guy who, was expressing his feelings for me. He would go out of his way to come see me when I was at work or bring me food.
I brought her food.
He bought me Waffle House. Like, ooh, if you know anything about
love, I don't know what
that's what I'm saying. And it's in the South, that is love. So, I did some soul searching and had to and it was just, I needed to change myself too, because about that time, work was getting to me, but I didn't realize how and why it was getting to me. I just knew that there was this shift in my personality.
Yep.
And he asked me out, and as a matter of fact, our kids had asked just 3 days ago, when was the first time me and Jason went out? And I said, well, I can't tell you the very first time. I just know it was in January. But I can tell you the first time we went out for the second time. And I mean, to the date, I can tell them that. And they're like, how do you remember? I think because it's close to our wedding anniversary. So I said, but we went out that night for trivia and we've been together ever since. And this year we'll be married 13 years.
13 years, yeah.
13 years. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Hey, I have an important question here, Jason. And like a lot is on the line here. So be very careful. Have you ever bought Lindsay coffee for like Mother's Day or her birthday?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
She don't drink coffee. Can you not get it?
She does not drink coffee. After the second time of being turned down, I remember that now.
I like it. Yeah, we're trainable. Us men are trainable. It just takes repetition, right?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
So what year did you, I mean, I'm math. So 2010 is when you guys got married, right?
2011. Yep, September 2011.
All right, love it. So 2011, you guys get married, and you guys are in, I'm sorry, Arizona?
Phoenix, Arizona. Yep.
Phoenix, Arizona. Tell us about the early days. There's no kids, right? You're just living. My wife and I call it the single life. It's not single. You're married, but on this side of having kids, we say single, and what we mean is pre-children, of where we had a little bit more flexibility to do what we wanted to do.
I call it, once you have kids, you're not able to move about the cabin freely.
No.
not the way you want to. The light belt, the seatbelt light is always on.
Yes. That's a really good way of saying it, right? The kids fell asleep. We have two options. We could get sleep right now or something else.
Yeah.
So we need to be strategic about what we do right now.
Exactly. So no, so the funny thing is, when Jason and I started dating, I was already in the process, a hiring process with Paradise Valley Police Department out here in Arizona. And so
we 5-6 months.
We were dating about 5 months before I moved out here, and then a few weeks later he moved out. But this is how the conversation went. We're dating. I'm like, okay, cool. I would come over to his house after I got off of work on Thursdays.
Thursday nights, yeah.
And we're sitting on the couch watching The Man Show.
Fantastic.
That was our Thursday night ritual. And, I'm telling him like, hey, I'm getting further along in the hiring process with this police department. They're going to be flying me out to do, get my conditional offer and all this other stuff. And his thing was like, well, I don't want you to go, kind of thing. Like, I don't, not that he wanted me to stay necessarily.
Yeah, I didn't say I don't want you to go, but, I don't want this to end either.
Right. And so I say, for whatever reason, well, you can come with me. And I was like, why would you do that? Why would you say that?
And then I was like, okay.
And then there was like this awkward silence. And then if I said something, I'm a butthole. And if I don't say something, I felt like a butthole. And so when I thought about it a couple of days later, I said, listen, because Jason at that time, was the longest relationship I'd been in. And I'm a late bloomer, so I didn't do a lot of dating. And then just the thought of moving somewhere with somebody, I was like, that's scary. I've never lived with a man. And I told him, listen, if you come because you want to, not necessarily, the sole reason can't be just me. But we had talked about moving.
Why else would I move to the desert?
we had talked about moving out of Arizona. I mean, moving out of Georgia in the past. And so I said, and we're not going to shack up. I know you have lived with previous girlfriends, but we're not doing that. And so when we moved out, he got a job. He was working, he transferred to a Target.
Yep.
Got a job just like that. And I lived on one side of town. He lived on the other side of town. And we did that for about 2 years, almost 2.5 years.
That was fun. I mean, that was a fun time because you got your girl, like not just girlfriend that you hang out with, but a serious girlfriend. This is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have very, I don't know, maybe it's not the normal thing for a relationship, but we have our own lives, right? She has all the stuff that she's interested in. She was, with the police department doing her thing. I worked at Target. I was very involved in mixed martial arts. And I hung out with my buddies at the gym and did all that stuff. We had very different lives. And when we were together, we'd come together and be together.
Mm-hmm.
But we were okay being apart too.
But I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that we worked opposite schedules the majority of the time
Oh,
we
yeah.
were together. So we didn't know any other way. And so, it's like absence makes the heart grow fonder. So when we were together, like we made the best of that time.
Mhm.
And actually yesterday was the date he proposed to me in 2010. And he proposed to me the night we closed on this house. So, because I even said to him, like, I knew that we were going to end up living together, but I told him I didn't want to live together unless we were married.
Yeah.
I was like, I got to give this a little trial run first.
But the joke is between us, he proposed to me the night we closed on the house in my uniform. It was after work. And I'm like, in my uniform. And I was like, you just wanted a place to stay. I know what you're doing.
My lease was about to be up, and I didn't want to sign a new lease. I'm like, we'll just get married and be fine.
So, but yeah, so yesterday was our anniversary. 14 years in this house. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yes, congratulations. I think it's important for us to pause on those type of things. I mean, but before the recording, you all were talking about having, traditions in your family, and I think those traditions, even when they seem or dates, even when they seem, it's just another day, it's important for us to recognize it though and celebrate the relationship, celebrate the family, celebrate, whatever it is that we value, because I don't think we have those natural pauses in our culture otherwise. Don't take advantage of the days.
Well, too, just being in law enforcement, we see so much so fast, and we can get jaded very quickly because of it. So I totally agree with you on that. Like just those little things, like the kids wanted a little treat after school yesterday. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get me and Jason some ice cream. We will, after they go to bed, we will celebrate with our favorite ice cream, 14 years in our house.
Yeah.
And like you said, before we had kids, I mean, we didn't have a lot of time together, just because of our schedules. But I mean, we traveled, domestically and internationally. We would have great parties. We talk about that all the time. Our parties were like amazing. But now with kids, it's like, well, everybody we know has kids. And I don't want those kids in my house. No. It would, but
sometimes I don't want our kids in the house.
This is true. And I love them very much. But game nights, Halloween parties, so that was our life beforehand, or people would just come over just to kick it. But obviously, you know how it is. You have kids. I'm me more than Jason, but I know we agree on this. I'm very strategic about who we have around the kids. And not everybody is allowed in our house. That's just, it's just, once our kids got here, I shut down. Not that we don't socialize, because we do. We're still very. I'm the extrovert. He's the introvert.
I'll stay at home with a book. I'm good.
But you just, the world is interesting, and I want the right people in our kids' lives, and I want to build the right community for them.
Yeah, I've offended a few people. I've had people knock on my door. Hey, our daughters are friends. Can they come spend the night at our house? I'm like, no.
I don't know you.
Yeah. No, I'm like, I don't know you. Oh, well, my ex-husband used to work at the jail. Okay. I don't care. I work with cops that aren't allowed around my kids. So let's keep talking here.
Sure.
I love them at work. They got my back. We're going to clear buildings and they're going to be a bullet sponge so I don't get hit in the back. But when it comes to my kids, you got to be qualified. There's a difference there. Are you qualified? And don't take offense if you're not qualified. We actually had a couple come over to our house. I hope they're not listening to the podcast. This is going to be all. This has been probably 13, 14 years now. And we said, hey, listen, we don't know you. We're willing to get to know you, but we know you guys. And they were like, all right, excellent. So can we come over for dinner? I'm like, yep. Yeah, you guys come over for dinner. So they came over for dinner. And when dinner was done and we had conversation and they're leaving, like, so can your daughter spend the night? And I was like, no, you guys failed. I didn't say the failed part, but I said no. And I mean, and it wasn't that they failed. There's nothing wrong with them. Again, you're not qualified to be in charge of my kids, and so, yeah, it's just a different level when it comes to our kids. Lindsay, you said something there that I was hoping that you guys both could unpack. Maybe starting with you, Lindsay. You said that the job started to impact you. You didn't realize it at first, which has been my experience. I didn't realize the impact that it was having. What was that? What was you mentioned jaded, but like what was going on where you started to eventually realize, oh my gosh, this is starting to impact me?
So I was at my first department in Georgia for 4.5 years. I worked for Gwinnett County Police Department for 4.5 years. And the area I worked in was pretty busy. I mean, we were hopping. We were pretty hopping. And so I experienced a lot in a short amount of time. And, back then, 2004, when I just hit the road, we weren't talking about cumulative stress, and some of the things I noticed, I was irritable. Everybody, the typical stuff that happens, like that person's bad, stay away from me, I'm watching you. And just a little bit of that paranoia sets in. And then I remember getting to the point where I felt like I was like coming apart, meaning like if you can imagine, there was a old like Looney Tunes cartoon where Daffy Duck got hit over the head with, I think it was like a wooden mallet, and he began to crack like glass, and he takes his arms and he holds himself together. And that only lasts for a few seconds before he falls into a pile of Daffy Duck with his beak on top. And then he sweeps himself up and throws himself in the wastebasket. And that's how I felt. Like I felt like I was holding myself together constantly. And I remember having these episodes where I could be in the middle of a conversation with you and just have to walk away because I feel like I'm going to cry. Or I'd be driving in my patrol car and just tears would come out of nowhere. And I'm not a big crier, at least, I mean, I wasn't a big crier, but back then, and I'm like, what is going on? But it's like, who do you talk to? I'm new in this job. I'm around a lot of older officers. I was one of a few females at my particular precinct. I don't want to talk to them about this because everybody's going to think I'm weak, because that's the mentality, right? It's rub dirt on it and keep moving, pour some alcohol on that dirt and keep yeah.
Alcohol will fix it, they said.
Yeah, they'll fix it. And party and the whole 9 yards, get very little sleep sometimes, and come back to work and do it all over again. But nobody's talking to one another about what it is we are experiencing. We're all experiencing it in our own little silos, right? Rather than saying, you know what, Chris was on that call with me the other day. I wonder if he can't sleep. I wonder if he's having flashbacks, but we don't do that, right? Yep. All in fear of someone thinking that we have an issue, but we're in the business of trauma. That's the thing. Now, back then, I didn't recognize that. And even when I think about all the crazy calls I was on at that department, I can't put my finger on the one that I'm like, this is the tipping point right here. Yeah. That I definitely can identify as cumulative stress.
Yes.
And moving was an idea for me. I just needed something different. But something made me realize, was a conversation that a corporal had with me, is he asked me, what did I like? And I said, excuse me? He says, what do you like? Because all I ever hear is what you hate, what you don't like, who you don't like. And I didn't like the way that sounded. And I wasn't upset with him. Because I can be, I can be introspective sometimes, be like, I don't like the way that sounds, because I'm friendly, I'm goofy, I love being around people. But if that's how it's being viewed on the outside, I didn't like the way that felt. And then another friend of mine would call me Smurf all the time. And I'm like, why are you calling me that? And he's like, because you walk around here like an angry Smurf all the time. And I'm like, ew, like that just didn't feel good. And then even though I'm in this process to move, I realized, well, you take you with you. If you don't change what's going on, I'll be angry Smurf in a new environment. Yes. And I kind of, I started changing my attitude. And around that time is actually when me and Jason started dating. Yeah. So maybe my attitude was repelling relationships. Just opportunity after opportunity came up for me, but it was that shift in me that was like, no, I can control this, but I have to deal with some of these things. Now, I didn't really understand it. I just knew I needed to be more positive. And it wasn't until later in my career, education, the conferences and things like that I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So that's why I behave like this. That's why I got that discipline for that. And I noticed it was a cycle. Now that I can look back, I had this discipline cycle that I couldn't recognize then.
I was just talking to my daughter on the way to school today, my 12-year-old, and we talked about the common factor in life. And she was telling me about shoes. She goes, Dad, when I was young, my shoes used to always come untied. And I always wondered why each pair of shoes didn't work right. And she goes, eventually I realized it was me. I'm like, yes, that was the common factor. And that's what I hear you
That's
saying,
awesome.
Lindsay, is you realize that
That's
you are the
awesome.
common factor in all of your
Yeah.
chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's what my best friend said to me about about my dating choices. He says, I love you, but you're the common denominator in your failed relationships. You pick these guys. And
Yeah.
I mean, it stung, but it was right. And I was like, oh, well, here's a guy that actually wants to spend time with me rather than chasing after someone who doesn't have time for me. But that's really adult for her to kind of think that, because there are adults that don't understand that. And it's not saying anything bad about you necessarily. It's just we're humans and we like patterns. We operate in patterns. Sometimes you have to change your pattern up. And that's what I did. It wasn't always smooth. There were some bumps because I found trauma again when I came out here to Arizona.
Yeah.
But each time I found it, I had developed better ways to handle it. Some of the old ones were still there. We have access to Old Town, which is an area over in downtown Scottsdale, lots of bars, lots of clubs. And oh yeah, you want to go out? Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna push that child drowning right out of my head. Yeah, I will take a shot of Patron. I don't like tequila, but I will take that.
Yep.
Because you want to numb it, you want to forget.
Didn't help that I worked at a lot of those clubs doing security there as well, and she'd come visit me at work
for the free drink.
For free drinks.
Now this is interesting, Jason, because you meet Lindsay and you guys start courting as she's doing this transition. So now that's your baseline. Your baseline isn't old Lindsay. Your baseline is this process, this transforming Lindsay. Did you see the impact on the job? Before we get to the shooting, did you see any impact on the job to where you did see some of that negative mindset or cyclical behavior or whatever?
In looking back, yes, I can recognize it now. Then I had no idea. I thought I knew what police officers did. I had a general idea. I made the mistake of listening to the police scanner when I worked at Target one night and there was a shooting. I'm like, oh my God. Right. I didn't really understand all of that. That's not my world. That's not what I lived in. Right. I grew up relatively sheltered as far as that kind of stuff goes. I didn't know about, all the horrific things that police officers see on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand what she was going through, and even less than she understood at the time.
Yeah.
So when I met Lindsay, it was all fun and games. When you're first dating, it's, you have a good time and you flirt and joke around and stuff. So that wasn't like on top of mind then. But I did notice the difference between the Lindsay that I first started dating and the Lindsay that I moved out to Atlanta or out to Phoenix with was different, right? There was different behaviors, different even things like the partying and the alcohol or the just kind of distancing herself had changed. And then the longer we were out here, I noticed things changing more. And sometimes some of that's just becoming an adult and coming into yourself. But some of it is her understanding what's going on and her understanding that she needed to change those patterns, right? So she'd make life changes. And like I said, it was subtle. So it's not like something like, hey, something's going on, what's going on? It just kind of happened. And I started to understand more as well, because she'd come home and she'd be, some days she just like looked like she got hit by a truck, she's just beat down and just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on? And she didn't always want to talk about it, because that's pretty common with officers, right? You don't want to bring that trauma up again, or you don't want to put that on your significant other.
Yeah.
But we started talking a little more, and she'd tell me some of the stuff that she went through, and I'm like trying to figure out like, how would I process that? I mean, that's horrific.
Totally.
And so I got a little better understanding of what she was going through, and I could look back and kind of see the changes that she was going through and the changes that she made in her life to better herself and better things for us.
Yeah.
And as time went on, we got married and we had kids, and leading up to that incident, it made us understand each other better, and we're able to work through all that stuff better because I could look back and see what we were doing in the past.
Yes. The incident that I want to get into here in a little bit, if you would have been old Lindsay from Georgia, your foundation would not have been as solid for you to recover and work through. Yeah.
Me and you probably would not have met, to tell you the truth. Part of it too is the year prior to my shooting. So the shooting happened in 2018, but at the beginning of 2007, we had a second child. So I had my daughter, and she was born in January. I wasn't diagnosed with postpartum depression until November of that year. So that's 11 months, right? Had been back at work for 7 months with arrest powers and a firearm, feeling this way, right? Like that could have gone rogue. Like when I think about it, because I mean, we see what postpartum depression can do. And I think postpartum depression happens more often than we want to admit. Yeah. And it may even be a normal part of the postpartum, like that fourth trimester, as they call it, than we want to admit sometimes, right? And so I convinced myself I had baby blues, and baby blues is only supposed to last for a few weeks, but this was months. And Jason, part of that, being able to see the change, Jason had a conversation with my mom and had a conversation with his mom, as they brought things to his attention about my behavior. Yeah. And so then they put the big man up to have that conversation with me. And, as you know, when we did our presentation, when we met, and, and Jason talks about how, now I have to go tell my tactically trained wife that I think something's wrong with her. And the thing is, though, when he came to me, his language was very supportive. It was out of concern. He didn't call me crazy. He didn't say, why are you acting like that? Like, it was not an argument. It was, hey, I've noticed some things have been different. You're not as social. You're not as engaged. You're even at home with us and, with the kids and me. And, you're not going out the way you used to, hanging out with your friends and stuff. And he's like, I think we need to go back to the doctor. And to me, the we is very significant because we are married. We created these kids. And I remind people, if your significant other had a terminal illness, you wouldn't say, oh, go take care of that by yourself. That brain tumor, drive yourself to the doctor. Don't worry that you can only see out of one eye. You take care of that yourself. So, but when it comes to postpartum, and I understand it to a certain extent, sometimes, guys will back off,
it's scary, right?
It is.
She talks about like having to go talk to her about this stuff. I was terrified. I love my wife. I don't want to hurt her feelings. I don't want her to think that, I'm judging her or anything like that. But that's what it feels like when you're having these conversations. Yes. It was scary.
And you can get defensive too. And I get it. But at the same time, we created this, so we need to help take care of it. Absolutely. So it's not a her problem. It's everybody. It's a family problem, because postpartum affects how she treats herself, how she treats you, the other kids in the house, other family members. And I mean, we've seen the extremes of postpartum, which is postpartum psychosis, where lives have been lost. And it's not just the mom, kids too, right? Yes. And so, I was very glad, to have such a supportive, not just support from Jason, but from our moms. Yeah. And then other people we started talking to. My doctor was great. They included Jason on my, wellness plan, if you will. And even though I fought it for a while, I eventually had to take medication. Yeah. And I like to tell audiences, if you're thinking about it, do it. Yeah. Because what's the alternative? Continue to feel the way you feel. And sometimes taking medication can be the difference between life and death, a happy life or an unhappy life. Because if sometimes we just have to take medicine just temporarily to incorporate other resources, whether it's holistic, therapies, other supplements, and things like that, just to level us off. But sometimes we have to take it forever. Heart conditions, diabetes, high blood pressure, people take medication for that. They can do lifestyle changes, but sometimes it's not enough. Yeah. And you'll tell people that you take medications for that. But when it comes to antidepressants and stuff like that, it's like, oh, I don't want people to think I'm crazy. And I'm like, you're not crazy, but we enter into a job where we see some crazy stuff.
Yes.
So we're not crazy. We're just dealing with crazy situations. We're having a normal reaction to an abnormal situation.
Yes.
So I think that's what, yeah. And I mean, I think that's honestly what really helped us after the shooting too, is because we had better communication, not just between us, but with my mom, with his mom.
Family,
yeah. My one of my best girlfriends from college who lives out here. And so they can kind of look out. And honestly, I felt relieved when he said something, because I'm like, oh, you can see what I'm feeling. Okay, I thought it was just me, and it just made a difference to be seen and to be validated and not feel like I was going crazy. And the thing is, when we don't talk about things, when we keep it all in here, we can convince ourselves of a lot of things that just aren't true.
Yes.
And started seeing a therapist. I was eating better. I was sleeping better. I had a better attitude overall at work. I was considering getting promoted, which is something I chucked off the table. And I was being more involved at work. So there was definitely a change, an upswing in my personality and outlook leading into the shooting.
And that went across the board too. It wasn't just work. It was with the family. It was with the kids. It was socially. You could definitely see a difference, and you could feel a difference. Those weird moments when she was just shut down, like sitting on the couch and not talking to anybody, that's completely outside of her normal personality. Those were gone, and it's like, hey, I got my wife back. I got my I got Lindsay back. This is great.
I felt like that too. Like after that 2-week period after you take a medication. I don't know if you've ever taken any medications like that, and I just woke up one morning and was like, oh, hello, old Lindsay. Like, girl, I have missed you.
Yep. I'm currently taking some. This last June, I really spiraled again, and I ended up to medically retire from law enforcement. And thankfully, in 2010, when I first experienced anxiety and depression, I fought with my doctor and counselor. I don't do medicine. I don't take vitamin C very, very much. I don't want to do anything else. And it wasn't until I had the second large anxiety attack and some pretty violent images flashing through my mind that I walked into my counselor and I said, do what you got to do. Like, I got to be a husband and I got to be a dad. So fix me so I can do those two things. And so this go around, when I started to spiral, like, it was immediate. Like, literally it was 2:30 in the morning and I grabbed my phone and I messaged my doctor saying, I need help. I got stuff going on again. And she, instantly prescribed some stuff to me. And here's the thing. You said it really nice there. We look at it different. If I'm taking, when I was in the Air Force, they would prescribe 800 milligrams of ibuprofen for like everything. Like, that was like the magic pill that they'd give us, right? And none of us question, oh, you're on 800 milligrams of ibuprofen? We were like, oh, dude, you're broken. You're messed up. Watch out for him. No, it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Here's the deal. Mental injuries are very similar to physical injuries. If you don't believe it, get on medical research and see the brain scans that actually show structural changes in our brain when we have these injuries. Because, once we get there, because I don't think we're there, we're getting better because of people like you guys who are going around and talking about this. So we're getting better, but we still have a long way to go, not just within the law enforcement culture, but I think society at large, because we still stigmatize
100%
mental health.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Let's get into this event, this shooting. Kind of play it out for us, Lindsay, if you could. What led up to it? What happened?
So just to give you a little bit of backstory on something that was going on with me prior, and I remind people, a lot of times when we have a critical incident, we're already dealing with life, right? So my example of already dealing with life was my shooting happened. Me and my partner were shot while attempting to serve an order of protection on October 29, 2018. Well, on October 20th of 2018, an officer at my first department back in Georgia, Antoine Tony was his name, was shot and killed. And it rocked the department. It rocked the community. Well-liked young man, been on the force for like 3 years, had just turned 30, 3 days before he died. And just, people really, really liked him. And he gets shot multiple times, doesn't get a second chance. And, I was upset. I didn't know him, but I am listening to people who I'm still very close with back at that department struggle with this. And just like, I'm not there with them. And I have the backdraft mentality of you go, we go. So if you're going to be messed up, I'm going to be messed up. So I'm not there to physically experience this with them. So, but I watched every news report, read all the articles, the funeral procession, the ceremony, I like everything.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to my friends. There were, I think, two people involved. One guy was caught that day, and then a second guy was caught and eventually shot a few days later. But I'm talking to my friends as they're out on that scene, perimeters, command posts, all this stuff. And I didn't realize what a toll that was taking on me, because I'm trying to be there for my friends who I just want to hold. It's rough to listen to veteran officers cry on the phone.
Yeah.
And I just want to hug them. And so at the time I worked Saturday through Tuesday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday, my Monday, I'm going to work. Jason was working overnights at the time. My mom watches the kids. And she called me about something that overall was mundane in the world of, nanas watching grandkids. But it felt like a big deal. I can't even tell you what she called me about. It was something about the kids, and it just irritated the mess out of me. I didn't say anything to her because me and her are known to go back and forth because we have similar personalities. I just remember getting off the phone, and all of a sudden this wave of emotion came over me, rose up my body, and I started raging in the car. Like I'm white knuckling the steering wheel. I'm punching the steering wheel. Like I'm crying, I'm screaming. I took the phone, I slammed it down in the floorboards like I'm losing it, right? Yeah. And so I was like, okay, clearly something's going on, right? And I'm driving, and I picked my phone up off the floorboard, even though my mom is kind of the one that tipped over my already very fragile Jenga tower, as I call it. She's the first person I called. And I didn't come home because I was closer to work at the time. And I talked to a sergeant who I really trusted at work because my sergeant was out on a training. This poor man let me cry all over him for 30 minutes, snotted all over his outer vest carrier because I was angry.
Yes.
Yeah, he was great. I love his disposition, but I was just angry and I was confused, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, this is what this guy wanted to be since he was a kid. I didn't know him. I couldn't imagine if I knew him. Yeah. And so that kind of kicked off some things for me. And the sergeant says, you know what, go home and spend time with your family. I did that. Sunday, didn't feel mentally well enough to go to work. I was at the age then where if I wasn't feeling well, I'm not going to work. Yeah. Not that I'm being a slug or I'm sandbagging or anything like that. I just have gotten out of going to work when I wasn't physically or mentally there, because that can cause issues, right? Yeah. You have the time, use it.
Yep.
Nobody's giving you brownie points for never taking sick time. No. Those are the angry people at work. So, and if you're out there, I'm not trying to offend you. I just want you to use that time because sometimes you just need it to decompress. Yeah. Monday morning, I got up. I said, you know what? I think I'm okay to go to work today. I'm going to go to work. Got into the station. A friend of mine who was on light duty sees me in the hallway. I would always go check in on her because if you've ever been on light duty, you just kind of get lost in the shuffle of the department, and yes, people act like you don't matter anymore. And she was pregnant. So try being pregnant. I've literally had people think the larger my stomach got, the less my intelligence became as well, right? You watch your mouth. You watch your eyes. You watch your eyes. So I would always check on her. And she checked on me that morning. And she says, hey, I noticed you haven't been at work for the last couple of days. So I worked 3 out of 4 days with her. And she was like, is everything okay? And then there was a pause. So just like the we need to go back to the doctor was significant for me and Jason's conversation about my postpartum, the pause was significant between me and my friend in that moment, because her body language as she leaned up against the wall and there was silence let me know she really wanted to hear my answer.
Yeah.
It wasn't an over the shoulder conversation like, hey, Chris, how you doing? And I just keep walking and I don't wait for your answer, right?
Which is what we do most of the time. We do. I've done most of the time. I'm just saying.
Same here. And I just verbal diarrhea, just blah. I just let it out right there. And only the sergeant knew what had been going on with me. Obviously, my family knew, but only the sergeant at work. And I told her I was angry. It wasn't fair. I said, I fell into law enforcement. Like, this wasn't my first choice of career, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I said, this guy wanted to be a cop since he was little and he doesn't get a second chance. And then I jinxed myself because I said, I've been dodging the proverbial bullet for 15 years.
Like you saying quiet. Quiet night tonight.
Exactly. And that's what I did to myself. And 6 hours later, she hears me being shot on the radio.
Oh.
And so, but I'm very thankful for that conversation because that conversation allowed me to get out of my head, like I was saying earlier, right?
Yes. Which may have made the difference. That may have made the difference to where you had more capability to go back to your training and tactics.
And and outside of training and my partner, I've told that friend, you saved my life. Like you verbally saved my life without even knowing it. So it's about 2:30ish in the afternoon. My partner had taken a domestic violence report at our headquarters from a woman who said her boyfriend of about a year doesn't work, gets drunk a lot, and he beats her. It's been like that most of the relationship. He thought, this was a Monday, he thought she got up and went to work that morning.
Okay.
She had not. She went to the headquarters. While she was waiting on an officer to come take her report in person, our victim advocate group got a hold of her. They helped her fill out an order of protection application. It was granted. It was sent out to the street. An officer who worked the morning shift had attempted to serve it twice already during his shift. So now the boyfriend knows she didn't go to work because cops are at his door, right? He never answered the door though. He did text her at some point saying something about the police officers coming to the house, but it wasn't to the point where we should have been like on high alert about his behavior.
Totally. That's normal.
We've had those calls, right?
Yep.
So it was not a routine call, but we've done this before where one person has standing who's outside of the home and someone who has standing inside of the home is not opening the door. So the person who's outside lets us in. We make contact with the defendant or the suspect. We serve them with paperwork or arrest them and serve them with paperwork.
Yeah.
That was the plan. My partner calls me as I'm about to get something to eat. And I said, all right, I'll meet you guys over there. We met up the street, went over the paperwork. Nothing crazy stood out to us. And as you know, and I've probably said this a million times on interviews or in my presentation, those of us in law enforcement know that states don't always share information as easily as they should. So if we had known what we found out later, we probably would have taken a different approach. This guy was not a nice guy.
Yeah.
And violent past. And as we're walking up to the house, my partner asked a question she had already asked during her initial interview. Are there any weapons in the house? She said no, but we live in Arizona. I assume everybody has a weapon. My puppy probably has a little something on her hip right now, So it's a small house with a carport. The carport's on the left, front door and windows to the right, if you can imagine that. There's a car in the carport. It's his car. And there's an exterior door that she unlocks. And that exterior door leads into a small laundry room. And then there's an interior door. You open that door and it goes into a kitchen. It's a U-shaped kitchen. So to your left is the refrigerator, counter, stove. And then the bottom of the U is the sink, a window. And then to the right of the U is like the bar area. And then continuing to the right is the rest of the house. It opens up to the rest of the house. Well, the girlfriend didn't go all the way in the house, which I thought was odd, because a lot of times when couples are splitting, the person who's the plaintiff on the order of protection is standing front and center, but she didn't do that. Domestic violence, she's probably afraid of this guy, understandable.
Yeah.
The next thing that caught my eye is my partner is taking out her flashlight. And I'm thinking, like, why is she taking out her flashlight? Because it's like closer to 3 o'clock at this point, and it's pretty bright in Arizona at that time. I walk in and my eyes are adjusting because it was dark in the house, but not unusual for Arizona. We use blackout curtains here, but I remember feeling like the house was eerily dark, and my partner made the same statement later after the shooting happened. Yeah. And my concentration is broken from that thought when I hear her talking to somebody. So I step in the door a little bit more, and because she can see down a hallway that I can't see down, and there's a male wearing a tank top and shorts walking towards us, neutral facial expression, even like a chill pace. Never said anything to us. My partner said who we were, why we were there, and we need to talk to him. And I'd say he got within somewhere between 12 and 15 feet, if I had to guess, because it was a smaller house. She told him to take something to the effect of take your hands out of your pockets. And when he came out with a 6-shot revolver and immediately started firing. And my partner was standing to my left, and she's a little smaller than me. So when the first shot went off, I actually thought she got shot like in the face. But I didn't have time to look because he's rushing towards me. And so training kicks in, right? Yep. So, I go to draw and step to the side, but, sometimes I think about it like I'm right-handed. So I automatically stepped to my right, and I feel like I stepped right into that first bullet, right? But then I'm thinking if I'd stepped to the left, he's still coming at me, and it would have ended up like shooting him within like a 5-foot range maybe. And then that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? Yeah, so damned if you do, damned if you don't. So just the things that go through your head, right, later. And I get shot in my right arm, my right forearm, and there was like a burning sensation and then numbness. And I turned to run because he's rushing, and I'm like, if I get tackled, this is not going to be good. The girlfriend had already run out of the door. I turned to run out of the door. He fires again. I get shot in my upper left arm, but I think because of adrenaline, I didn't actually feel that one at the time. Yeah. He shoots back at the house, and I'm assuming to shoot at my partner. That bullet did not hit anyone. It went into the door jamb of the exterior carport door. And my partner returned fire. And all I can imagine is between the interior door and the exterior door, these doors are, starting to move. And he must have been at an angle because she did fire one time and she hit him. It went in his side chest cavity, came out of the front. He was right behind me, had his arm outreached with his firearm. He shot me a third time, and I got hit in the lower left side of my back. And actually the bullet from his chest came out and went into his right forearm, is from what I understand as well. So 3 holes, 1 bullet. And I ended up falling because I got hit over my kidney and it knocked my legs out. And I didn't know at the time, but my partner was still in the house. He actually ran in the opposite direction. And later when officers got there, they followed the trail of blood, and he had hopped over in somebody's backyard. He had 1 more bullet left in the revolver, and he used that one to take his life. When I'm laying on the ground, though, I thought I was down there for quite some time. But I went down and I popped back up. But I was like, when I was running, I felt like I was running through water. Like my legs could not move fast enough. Like even when I talk about it, my legs like feel like jello a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when I was down on the ground, I had these thoughts, like very distinct thoughts. And I said, how can thoughts go? Like the brain is amazing, first of all. How can you have that many thoughts like that? So the thoughts that went through my head were, I'm paralyzed because I couldn't feel my legs for a hot second. The next thought was, did I pee on myself? Because I had to go to the bathroom before this call. And if I did, I can't feel it. Then it's like, where is this guy? Because I don't want to look over my shoulder and get shot in the face. And it's not for vanity reasons. I just don't want to get shot in the face. And then I thought about Jason and our 2 young kids who were 4 and 22 months at the time. And from that, it was, I was like, I know I have to go home. Like I got babies at home and a husband, and then you talk about that muscle memory. And, this is why I tell people in academy, your instructors are doing things for very strategic reason, even when they're yelling at you. My instructors from Georgia came back into my brain. I can hear them. I can feel them. They're yelling. You will stay in the fight. You will go home. Your family deserves to see you. And I got motivational at that point. And I said, bitch, get up, because this is not where we die. I don't want anybody to have to tell my husband, your wife's not coming home today. Yeah. And I got up, I ran several houses down. My mic got knocked off, so it's swinging. You ever get in a fight or a chase, and now you got to try to catch your mic. And I'm an earpiece person. So as I bring the mic up, my hand is like this, and then my forearm is like this. And I've never broken a bone, but I guess, go big or go home. I look at my arm and I can see tissue because it went in here and it came out here. And I'm like, well, that's white meat. That's a problem. That's broke. I see tissue. And I'm thinking this while I'm running, but I have auditory exclusion. So everything sounds muffled on the radio. Yeah. I don't remember hearing my partner at the time on the radio, even though she was already on the radio. I remember later, after hearing the traffic, I was like, oh, people were asking me where he went. And I gave an answer, but I don't remember giving those answers. Yeah. I run several houses down. And the funny thing is, and I say this every time I tell the story, I really need to go take a picture of this. We live in the desert, okay? A lot of cacti out here, a lot of succulents. There was actually an established tree in the front yard of a house. That's where I ran to and took cover. And I'm like, thank goodness, a whole tree, not just a little, what are the
not a big tree?
Palo Verde.
No, the Palo Verde trees.
They're this big.
they're nice looking trees, but they're very messy, but there's nothing this was this had a trunk. This had been in this neighborhood for decades, right? Yeah. And so that's where I took cover. I'm trying to get my brain together. I tell people your brain and your mind are on 2 different tracks at this point, because my mind is thinking, all I wanted to do was get a teriyaki bowl before my partner called me. That's what I wanted, extra veggies with chicken and white rice. That's all I wanted, right? But my brain was in survival mode, full-blown survival mode. So now I'm thinking, okay, I need to be with my partner because I'm sure she ran out of the house after him. Again, not knowing she's still in the house. She didn't want to pop out and the guy be outside that door, and I didn't hear her asking initially where he was. And then I'm like, she went after him. She's a badass. I need to be with her. So we're going to go at it one-handed. I threw my hurt arm across my chest. I reach across with my support hand. I'm like, this is going to be badass running down the street. That's all I know, right? Well, it wasn't. It wasn't, Chris. I'm going to tell you, because there was no gun in my holster.
Finger gun.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't do that because these were like this. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, well, I can't take what I know to be a gunfight. I cannot take 2-shot arms into what I know to be a gunfight.
Nope.
I had such tunnel vision that I was thinking about going back into the house. That's where I thought I dropped it. My tunnel vision was narrowing. If I looked down a couple inches, it was right there in the dirt, a few houses down.
Yeah.
Never saw it. Still to this day, even when I see it on camera, I'm like, okay, I never saw it. And I'm like, well, then what do I do? Well, I can hear sirens. So we were right off of a heavily patrolled area. And we were down the street from one of our substations. It was a double squad day at the end of the double squad shift. So a lot of things worked out in our favor as far as getting officers there promptly. When I count on the body camera, because my body camera fell off, I can hear sirens in under 2 minutes from my partner putting it out. I compared it to the CAD. My partner puts it out on the radio to where I can hear the siren. It's under 2 minutes, which is quick, right? For law enforcement sometimes. that's what broke me out of that. Do I go back into the house? Do I stay here? Do I go back into the house? I run across the street because this is across the street from a park. And I remember sitting on a hill when the first officer got there, and it just didn't feel real. Like, even when I tell this story, I'm telling what I saw on body camera, not necessarily what I remember.
Yeah.
Because I have this disassociative thing that happens when I look at the body camera, like, even it's been what, 5 years now? And I'm like, who is that person? Like, it doesn't look like me. It doesn't sound like me. And until I said, my mom's going to freak out. Yep. My mom's going to freak out. Because I just got off the phone with her. She had called me, checking on me on the way to that call. Right. Yeah. And now, less than an hour later, somebody's going to call her and say, hey, Lindsay just got shot. So as the adrenaline starts to, subside, the pain really kicks in. So they threw me in the back of a patrol car. One of my squad mates is taking me to the staging area. But in my mind, I'm thinking we're going straight to the hospital because I hurt. Right. And now, as he's pulling into the staging area, all I remember is, why are we getting burritos? I don't need burritos. I need a doctor. And I didn't want to go to the hospital that was closest. Like, we all have those in our areas. There's some like, don't take me to that one. But then it's like, okay, it's the staging area. And when I'm in pain, apparently I apologize, sweat, and curse, not necessarily in that order. And I did that in labor. Yeah. So I'm bleeding in the back of my shift mate's car, and he's like, Lindsay, like, you're fine. Like, don't worry about it. The ambulance is there. It pulls in, but I don't want to go anywhere yet because I need to make sure my partner's okay. Because I'm feeling like I'm about to pass out at this point. As they're getting me on the gurney, a car pulls in, a patrol car pulls in, doors pop open. She jumps out the back. She had been shot in her upper left arm as well. We lock eyes. You good? You good? Cool. You can take me. Now, I do want to say this. If you have any fire or EMS guys and girls that listen to this podcast, it's got to be a surreal moment to have to treat somebody, like, treat them as a patient, somebody you're used to working shoulder to shoulder with.
I think so.
And I saw that look, it's our department, it's our police department, our fire department. So they're like, oh my goodness, they're coming, right? Because we have a relationship. I saw it in the captain's face when he got to the back of the car and saw it with me, because we had worked several calls together over the years. And he's the muscle. I'm the calm voice. He's the muscle, right? And not like physically, but just, he's a big brooding guy with the handlebar mustache, and he just gives you that look, and they're like, okay, I'll do it. Fine. We can go to the hospital.
You
yes,
can
sir.
take me to the hospital. Yes, I'll get on the gurney.
I've been trying to do this for like 30 minutes. So I saw that look on his face like this, and it went away, and he went into work mode.
Yeah.
And so I'm in the ambulance, they're taking stuff off of me. They start cutting stuff off of me. Again, a bone that I pick with EMS all the time is I'm upset that my socks got cut off, because I have an issue with my foot I've had since college. I have plantar fasciitis. Those socks offered such superb support. I just feel like they could have just pulled them off. I don't know why the cutting had to happen.
Because they like their scissors, and anytime they get to use those scissors, man,
I know, but they cut off
guys with explosives,
right? And Velcro. But I get that, but they cut off brand new uniform pants. It's fine, uniform reimbursement, but my socks. Socks. I like those socks. I'm sorry. I get up in my feelings about it. So now I'm in the back of this ambulance. I want pain meds. They want to take my vitals. I'm like, blood pressure's high. I'm in pain. Like, this hurts, right? But a muscle memory thing that I was doing that I didn't realize until later, I did hypnobirthing with our second. So it's a form of meditation and breathing and using your own hormones to mitigate pain. Well, pain kicked in. I immediately jumped into visualization. The exercises we would go through, we would listen to while I was pregnant, only worked for short stints of time because it's not a peaceful environment, but it worked. So that's the importance of muscle memory, right? And training like you want to play. Yes. And so my very crunchy granola hypnobirthing instructor, knows nothing of our world, but I did tell her later, you were with me that day, and thank you for everything you taught me, because it worked. And my husband reminded me at the hospital when I was very upset that I couldn't do it for long periods of time, that my body was made to have a baby, not get shot 3 times. Touche, husband. Touche.
Yes.
So in the back of the ambulance, now I'm like, I need my phone because I need to call my husband. And they're like, no, we'll do it. We'll do it at the hospital. And I was like, no, because I don't need anybody knocking on our door, waking him up. My neighbors are retired. They watch the news and they're family to us. I can't let them find out. My mom, my brother, no one can find out on the news, right? I called him. It's weird as the phone is ringing. And I'm sure you've been in this situation where you're like, okay, what am I going to say? Just the situation itself sounds so outlandish, even though it could happen. But how do I say this and they believe me? And he didn't answer the first time. I called him back because he was asleep. And I told him to wake up, put his feet on the floor. So I knew he was awake. And I said, hey, so I'm okay, but I just got shot 3 times. I need you to get to the hospital.
I am glad that you led with "I'm okay," right? Instead of "I got shot 3 times."
Yeah. And he says I was pretty calm on the phone.
She was very calm on the phone. She was like speaking in normal cadence. Like if she hadn't said the words she said, I wouldn't have thought anything was wrong.
So Jason, what's going on? I'm just saying as a husband, like,
right. So like she said, I worked overnights. I was sound asleep. It was like getting a call at 3 a.m. for normal people, right?
Yeah.
So she did. She said, "Get up, put your feet on the ground." I'm like, what are you talking about? Fine, my feet are on the ground. What are you talking about? And that's when she goes, "I'm okay, but I got shot." I'm like, so like that hit you like a ton of bricks, right? Something like just punched me in the face. I'm like, okay, you're okay. She's like, "I'm okay, but I need you to come to the hospital." I'm like, okay, where are you? And she told me where she was going. And I'm like, okay, I'll be there. But there were other things that I had to do first, right? And that sounds weird, but our son was in preschool, and our daughter was over at our friend's house. While I was sleeping. So I'm like, okay, I got to get there, but I got to, I can't leave my kid at school. Somebody's got to get him. So I go to the school, I pick him up, I drive him over to our friend's house, drop him off, tell her what happened, because that's her college girlfriend that she was talking about. So I tell her what happened, and I'm like, I'm going to the hospital. Can you take care of the kid? She's like, yeah, of course, done. Right. So at that point, I'm done with the I need to be somewhat responsible because I have my children in the car, and it's Mad Max all the way to the hospital. Right.
I was going to ask how many traffic laws you broke, because I was already counting up how many I would have broke.
Name it, I broke it, and I didn't care. Like, they can follow me until I get to the hospital. They'll figure it out then.
Totally.
But at that point, the 30-minute drive, 5 minutes later, I'm pulling into the hospital, and there's, I say this, the ocean of blue, right? There are officers from different stations. There's fire department. There's EMS. There's so many people outside of this hospital. And I'm just like, oh my God. So going through my head, I'm like, why are there so many people here? This has got to be really bad. So I'm starting to freak out at that point, right? I was kind of freaking out before. Now I'm like really freaking out. Yeah. Her chief from the department was standing out front there. So I pull up in front of the emergency area where all the people were. She steps out, and it's all like 5 foot of her. She's a little tiny thing. And she grabs me. She's like, "Hey, give him the keys and come with me." I'm like, done. I don't care about the car. Right.
I do. That's my first car I bought as an adult.
You're my first wife.
Good answer. Really good answer, Jason.
But so I go in there, right, and all these things are going through your head as a husband. Again, I know there's a risk. I know that there's a possibility of her getting hurt on the job. Yeah. She puts herself in some pretty precarious situations. I know that's there, but I know that was a possibility. Now I know it's there, right? It's happened. It's done. So I'm walking into the hospital and thinking the worst. I don't know what I'm going to come into. My wife's been shot 3 times. That's all I know. I don't know where. I don't know how. I don't know what kind of shape she's in. So I come around the corner into the little triage area, and I see her, and she's sitting up, kind of propped up in the bed area there. There's a couple officers standing around her, and she's joking around and laughing and being bossy. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Everything's right with the world. We're okay.
I'm done. I got nothing to worry about now. But she talks about that a lot. She's like, there's 2 times she's seen fear on my face. And it's weird. I get emotional even just thinking about it. But
Yeah.
I'm a big guy. I'm a physical guy. I can fight any monster, right? Throw it at me. I'm ready.
Yep.
But that I can't fight. Right.
Yeah.
So she talks about the first time she saw it on my face is when we were having she was giving birth to our son. The doctor walked in and said, there's some complications, there's some stuff. We need to do an emergency C-section right now. She had cleared out the room of everybody and had this conversation with us. That terrified me.
Yep.
This was the same situation, right? I can't fix this. I can't fight this. I don't know what to do. But as soon as I saw her sitting up, being her, it was gone, right? She's like, that look just fell right off your face right away. And she asked me about it later. She's like, what happened? I'm like, you were you. I had my wife. I'm good. I don't need anything else. Right.
Yeah, it was just weird because it was there and then it disappeared, like just like the captain, just it was there and it's gone. And so I think sometimes when we like critical incidents and like big events in our lives, like we don't really realize how the other person views that until you really, really talk about it. We just assume I was there, you were there, we get it. And honestly, it wasn't until me and Jason sat down to put together our presentation that it really turned into like a counseling session for the both of us.
Yes.
Because there were things I didn't remember. There were things I just assumed about him and vice versa. So I didn't realize how isolated he felt at the hospital. Yep. Because he didn't know a lot of the officers that I worked with. I have a different relationship with my police family here than I do back in Georgia. Back east, it's a different relationship.
Yeah.
And Jason knew a lot of the officers I worked with because he came in contact with them at Target. That's how
I knew them before there was us,
Yeah, I mean, and that's how he got recognized at the bar that night, is because they saw the Target guy there. Yeah. And so, but Jason, I didn't realize, like, wow, like he didn't know anybody. And so, my mom is there. My brother is there. So it affects our families too. It's not just us. My mom, I'm thinking, okay, she's walking slow. She has replaced knees. It was taking her so long to get to my trauma bay. And then I find out she passed out. She got into the hospital and they took Jason right in, but parents get treated a little different at the hospital because he's my legal next of kin, but my mother doesn't want to hear that. She's like, oh, that's cute, but that's my baby. I don't care how old she is. And so I think they tried to kind of step in her way, and my mom, impact pushed a commander. It's fine. They've made up. But then the emotions got the best of her because she saw what Jason saw with all the officers, and she passed out and she bumped her head. So now while I'm waiting on her, she's getting a CT scan. So it's like this weird rippling effect. And my first department in Georgia is still reeling from losing an officer, and then they get this call. So it's just thing on top of thing. And I had great care at the hospital. Oh, yeah. My department did such a great job with peer support, departmental support, other agencies. I mean, the hospital that I went to is in Scottsdale. The Scottsdale chief showed up, and I knew him in passing. And I'm like, why are you here? And he's like, it's my city. And I was like, but I didn't get shot in your city. He said, doesn't matter. It's my city. I wanted to come see you. Right. A guy I used to work with in Georgia, he was working down in Tucson, and he just happened to be in Phoenix for a DRE training. Yes. And he shows up at my hospital door, and I'm thinking the drugs are so good, I'm now hallucinating.
Give me more, and give my right. Jason some of that stuff too.
I looked at him, and he looks at me, and he says, you didn't have to get shot for me to come visit. All you had to do is say, come visit. So we had really, really good support. I have no complaints. I don't have any departmental betrayal. I mean, our friends and our family were great. We have fantastic neighbors. I mean, we didn't cook any food for probably like the first few months I was home.
Loved it.
I have friends that put right. That's why I gained that 20 pounds sitting at home for 8 months too on industrial leave. But I mean, I had friends from Georgia come out, put their own lives on pause when they had their own things going on, own jobs on pause. to come out here just to wash our dishes and vacuum,
change
diapers and pick our kids up, take me to appointments because I couldn't drive, you know? So it just, you will find out who your community is, who your village is after something like that happens. I mean, me and Jason, we didn't want for anything. It actually got to the point we had to tell people to stop. Because you just, it's like after you have a baby and everybody wants to come over, you have to get into your normal rhythm. And you can't do that. Your doorbell is constantly ringing and you have to be on for people. So, like I said, I was home for 8 months. I struggled, but not as badly as I thought I was. And that is attributed to what was going on with me before the shooting. So I was in a good place overall prior to the shooting. Because a lot of us aren't. A lot of us are hovering or we're already in the hole. So when the big thing happens, it's just like, well, I'm just going to be down in this hole and I don't know how I'm going to get out. And so for me, I had good support. I have coping mechanisms. I was already seeing a therapist, so I didn't have to get used to talking to somebody. I already had that comfort. It wasn't forced on me. And that's what happens to a lot of us. A lot of us don't even see a therapist or a psychologist until the big thing happens at work. So, and honestly, it wasn't until about 5 or 6 months later, I'm sitting in therapy and I was grumpy that day and my therapist asked me what was going on. And I said, this is BS. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, I was doing all the self-care stuff we talk about. You know, I'm eating better, sleeping better. I came to see you. Like I'm doing all the things. And I said, just to get shot? Like, what was it for? I said, I should have kept with my unhealthy habits and still got shot. This is stupid. And so again, when you say it out loud, it sounds different. And other people can interpret what you're saying. And, you know, if you've ever been to a therapist, they sit there quietly and they give you the therapy face. They you know, and then they ask you, yes, that one. They ask you to unpack what you're saying. And I just I was like, huh. And she says, what does that mean? Like, what are you feeling? And I said, that sounds different when you say it out loud. And I said, so basically I'm complaining about the coping skills I've developed that's actually helping me now. But if I didn't have those, I would be in a much worse place than I am now.
A train wreck.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Like 100%. So it was just, it's a learning experience. I mean, you have to be willing to just really open yourself up and to be vulnerable. And really, I know we're type A and we like to control things, but we don't have any control over this. You don't have control over when your trauma decides to, you know, pop in and do a 3-way call. You know, you're not going to get a notification. It can just be like, you can hear our dogs, you know, being dogs in the background. It can be something as simple as them running through a room and knocking something over and just flashbacks, things, the noise. Your brain is an amazing, amazing organ, but man, it is sneaky. It is sneaky, you know? So I think one of the toughest things we had to learn as kids, a lot of us go our whole career without our kids really knowing the things we've been involved in and not understanding. And we were talking about PTSD offline, not really understanding why we are the way we are and why we view the world the way we do and why we won't let them do certain things. We're doing them a disservice by keeping that from them because they would have a much better relationship with us if they really knew. I know people who've gone their whole career, their kids didn't even know they'd been involved in critical incidents where they got severely hurt. They lied about the reason. We tried to lie to our son in the beginning, our 4-year-old. Oh, okay, I'll take that. I tried to lie to our son in the beginning. No, I didn't lie. I said, no. I said, I broke my arm fighting a bad guy.
Which is true.
Not true.
No, that's what I told.
Well, yeah, but then I confirmed it. But listen. Don't listen to him, Chris. Don't listen to him. My son saw the through and through on my upper left arm. Didn't look as bad. It was bruised. It didn't look horrible. And he goes, are you sure the bad guy didn't just shoot you? I was like, well, that was very observant for a 4-year-old. I told him I fell on a stick. That makes sense.
Yes.
And then he's like, my son is like an arrow. And I said, sure. So I talked to my therapist. She said, tell him kids are more resilient. We had the conversation. My son looked at me and said, duh, I told you got shot. And then proceeded to ask me why I lied to him. Now I have to try to explain to a 4-year-old that I didn't lie. I omitted some things. And now I'm getting frustrated because I shouldn't have to have a Merriam-Webster dictionary with a 4-year-old. And I was 39 at the time.
Yeah.
The thing about kids that young is their cognitive understanding of the world changes every few months. So their questions get more and more detailed, and how they view the world, how they view danger and things like that, it changes.
Yeah.
And my son, our son dealt with anxiety and worry at the age of 5. I didn't know what that looked like on a child that young, but it was present. And it was brought to our attention by his preschool teacher.
What did you guys do? How did you guys support him in that?
Conversation.
Lots of conversation. So he was doing certain behaviors,
and not doing certain behaviors.
So he's a very loving, touchy, like huggy kid, right? He likes that kind of stuff. And he was kind of secluding himself at preschool. He wasn't playing with his friends. He wasn't being helpful. He loved helping out the teachers. He was that kid, right? So he'd be sitting off in a corner by himself. We'd find him sleeping like in the closet, in weird places. He'd just lay down and fall asleep.
He was sneaking my uniform shirts to school, his teacher said, and pulling them out of his backpack, and then falling asleep at like weird spaces at times that weren't nap time. And he wasn't eating, which is huge because our son loves to eat. He's 9.5, and he's at the point where he wants thirds. So, and then she took him aside, and she knew what happened because Jason told her the day he went to pick him up from school, the day of the shooting. And, you know, he said his stomach hurt when he thought about me. Every time I say that, it gives me chills. It makes my stomach hurt.
Yeah.
Right. That makes me emotional because I'm his safe place. You know, I grew him in my stomach, which is no longer flat, but it's fine. You know, I love him. So, but I'm a safe place.
Yeah.
Like, why somebody who will never meet our son shattered his safe space, and that person's not even here to take responsibility for the chaos that they've caused. So that was tough for a while. Trying to tell him that I was going to be okay, even when I went back to work on light duty. He freaked out on me one morning. I wore a polo shirt that looked similar to my class C shirt that I wore on the road. And he's like screaming at me, "You said you weren't getting back in the car. You said," and I was like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa."
Yeah.
And when I look back on that, like, I calmed him down. We talked. I even showed him my boring desk I was going to be sitting at in crime prevention. Like, I loved my patrol car. But even if I hadn't healed physically enough to come back full duty, that was the moment I knew it was going to be really, really tough for me to come back to work, just mentally. I don't know that I could do that to my family. I know we do that, and I think male law enforcement does it a lot more than female law enforcement does it. Involved in, you all are involved in a higher number of critical incidents than we are, and go back to work. Go back to work. Meanwhile, your kids, your spouse, your family is at home like, we know it can happen. This is crazy. What are you doing? What do you mean you're going back to work?
Yeah, it goes back to the difference between knowing it's a possibility and knowing it can happen, right?
Yeah.
That's you think about that a whole different way.
Yeah.
And for me, it wasn't the critical incident, it was that cumulative trauma that you talked about before. And while I was at inpatient this summer, I wanted to go back to the job. I loved being a police officer. I still, even on this side of PTSD, I still think it's the most remarkable career. And there were some therapies we did where I had this realization that I couldn't do 3 different jobs. And these were the 3 jobs I was considering. So it left me in a really tough spot, going back to policing, being a school teacher, or being a pastor. And I realized I couldn't do any 3 of them because I couldn't experience child abuse and death at aggregate anymore. And all 3 of those jobs, I knew for a fact as a school teacher, I was going to build trust of kids. And then they were going to tell me about their Uncle Ted who touched their no-no. And you know what I'm saying? And I just couldn't take that in anymore. And my family deserved more. For 25 years, my wife had to play zone defense when I came home wearing the job, meaning, wearing the tough day or the tough week. and she deserved more, and I just didn't have the capacity anymore. I just couldn't do it. Or if I did, because I probably could have showed up for a day of work,
Mhm.
it was going to become disastrous for me, for our community. I don't know. I couldn't do it anymore. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's honest realization, because I think some of us push through, and it's not for us, it's because of what will other people think.
no,
My attitude is I don't care what other people think. I care about the
good
people
attitude.
in this house. I
Yes.
am married to Jason.
Yep.
I'm responsible for our 2 kids. So what other people say, I've had people say to me, "Oh, you took the easy way out."
Man.
You think
I'm
this was
sorry.
easy, this process I took? Give me
I
a
said,
gun. Give me a gun. Come here. Let's
I'm
yeah,
gonna
show
say that
you the
again.
easy way.
it doesn't feel good. And it's not, it's the rippling effect. You
Yeah.
know, anytime I talk to somebody or my shooting comes up, it came up at a friend's birthday party we were at over the weekend. People have a piece of our critical instance. They get this look. They can tell you exactly where they were when they found out. They can tell you the emotions that took place when they found out. Like, so it's not just us, you know, and yes, our families are married to the job. And if anything, they're probably more damaged in some cases than we are because, like you said, playing zone defense, walking on eggshells, not knowing who's going to come home and not being able to have conversations and, oh, daddy didn't mean it. And, you know, or mommy didn't mean it. It's not fair. And so we're constantly telling our families to support your Leo, but we're not really telling them how to support your Leo.
Yeah,
And
let's
I
get
think
into
we're
that. I think
getting
that's a
better at it.
great place for us to go with this right now. How, I mean, you two have had just some great experience in this. How can our families support the Leo, and how can our Leos,
Right.
or even first responders in general, do our part as well to help our families support us?
I think, I mean, really, like where we met you, like the conferences, like Behind the Badge and other like conferences where they encourage your significant other to be there.
That is huge.
Yeah.
I can attest. So like I said, I thought I understood what police went through. I knew there's risk. I knew there's things that happen and stuff like that, but I didn't know the extent of it until we went to it was the first retreat we went to. ERAP. So we go up there. That's, you know, spouses and the first responder, because there was police officers, fire. There was a 911 operator. We're all sitting in this room, and we're in this big U-shaped table. And the first thing we did is we everybody kind of went through their story, like why they were there. And I had to step out of that room 3 times that day to catch my breath.
Me too.
Because some of the stuff that they were talking about, I could not believe human beings could do.
Yeah.
Right. I knew there's bad stuff that happens. I know that, you know, the human process can be evil, but hearing it firsthand from people who had to experience it and had to fight it, blew me away. So it changed my perspective on how I saw her and how I understood her. I think these organizations that do that with the spouses and with the significant others are paramount in developing that understanding between the two.
Yes.
That it developed that communication, the ability to talk and real talk, like not that superficial stuff that we all do where like, oh, you know, it's okay, you'll get through it better, but deep, hurtful, difficult conversations that make things better.
Yeah. And it gave the spouses a place where they could talk, because the spouses had their own group where they can just be without us, because we talk a certain way, right? And we understand life a certain way. Our brains are different than our significant other a lot of times. So if we just go to the training, you and I, Chris, we will pick up certain things from the training that our spouses won't pick up, even though they're married to us.
Yep. And vice versa. Totally.
I'm going to go home and I'm going to try to convey the high points for me. That may not be the high points for Jason, because we are different people. So I think, one, being honest about the changes, but really like encouraging these types of trainings with the couple, not just sending the Leo to the wellness training. The significant other needs to be there too. And also, I tell people sometimes, me and Jason putting the presentation together, that was an eye opener.
Man.
And I tell couples, I said, listen, I'm not trying to start any fights, but pick up an issue from your past, or maybe you're having one right now. Pick an issue from your past and pretend that you're going to do a presentation on it and start talking about it. It opens up conversation, and you will see how differently you all experienced it, because there were things that weren't said. We are different. Oh, you should have known. We're all these things. And no hurt feelings, like, be honest. The other thing that I've come up with too is, or if you don't want to do that, just go to your separate corners, write down how you felt about that situation, your perspective of it from beginning to end, how they made you feel, things that were said. Exchange papers, read them on your own time, because a lot of times it's the messenger, and then have a conversation about it. Because sometimes just that paper can be that third party. Because if me and you get into it, like, there's more emotion, there's a personal thing. But I can say something to you, Chris, that maybe your wife has said, but sounds different coming from me, right?
Yep.
And for people with kids, this is fun, because our kids started doing this on their own 2 years ago.
This is fantastic.
Right. It gets annoying sometimes if they want to do it too much, but it's interesting. My daughter calls it the family game. Okay. Everybody sits in different spots at the table, and you have to act like that person.
While you eat dinner.
While you eat dinner. You have to act like that person at the dinner table. There can be no hurt feelings. That's the rule. No hurt feelings. But if you want to see how your family views you,
it's eye-opening, let me tell you.
I'm liking this. Oh my gosh.
And this is something my kids decided to do. And we play it probably weekly at this point. This has been 2 years now. And then it's like, do I yell that much? Or Jason's like, am I that grumpy? And I was like, sometimes after work, you are, you know. And then it's just like, our son doesn't keep still at the dinner table. I like it when Jason plays our son. That's hilarious. You know, and I love it when our daughter is me, because she's pretty spot on. But it's just interesting to see yourself on someone else, because they're internalizing that, you know.
Understanding their perception of you and how,
you
know, this is our normal behavior. We don't see it as being something wrong or different, or even see it changing. But when you see somebody else behaving like you, you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. You know, so it opens conversation though.
What you guys have done is you've layered this, but your core message that I'm hearing over and over and over again is we need to talk, and we need to listen to each other. And we need to sometimes use different tools, like writing a letter, that will help us have better communication. We need to have communication with our kids and be straight with them, because here's the deal. Even at 4, they're very perceptive of what's going on. And so I love this, because that's what my wife and I have seen through my career, especially the last 7 months. We've done podcasts on how to have great communication. And what I found out was my wife still didn't feel safe in saying some things to me. She was afraid that I wasn't going to receive her well. And so we've gone even deeper into having better conversation. And I understand her more now than I ever have in her life, because of what I know. You guys speak around the country. When's the next time you guys are going to be speaking together somewhere?
This weekend.
We're leaving for Jacksonville, Florida on tomorrow, actually. And we speak. So we speak for cops, concerns of police survivors. We speak twice a year at one of their TLEs, their trauma and law enforcement trainings. If you've never been, fantastic training,
great stuff.
3-day training. We generally speak on the first day in the afternoon. It's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They do them all over the country. It's free. The training itself is free. You just got to get there. And like I said, they do them everywhere. So if someone were to go to their website, Concerns of Police Survivors website, go to training, it has all the list of the upcoming trainings. I believe the next one is going to be in Vegas at the beginning of February.
Well, that's a good reason to go to Vegas, folks.
I mean, this is true.
I know this.
When we do these little trips too, it's nice because most of the time we do it without the kids. Every once in a while we'll bring the kids with us, but it's good time for us because again, we're doing this presentation and every time it changes a little bit, right?
Yeah.
As time progresses, you understand each other differently. Like you just said, I understand her more now than I ever have before.
Yeah.
And but taking that time, whether it's as us as presenters or people attending it, taking that time as a couple to be together,
Right.
just you is a really awesome thing to do. And this is a great opportunity to do it with things like that.
Well, and being intentional, just like the shift with you and your wife, that's intentional because you're no longer bogged down by the job, even though we loved it. There's just a lot of things we couldn't see and that we weren't letting in because of the job. And now sometimes it's uncomfortable, but sometimes it's like, wow, this is what I've been missing, or I didn't even realize I was talking to you like that or not receiving you like that. So being intentional, we like to explore the new cities that we're in and go find, where's the fun place to go eat or find a little sightseeing thing to do. And the way we keep the kids connected in that when they're not with us, I travel with these Beanie Babies that they got a kid's meal from a fast food place. Each one has their own little animal of a lion and a fox. And we take pictures with it at the training site when we sightsee and we send the pictures to them, in the hotel room. And, they're always comfy on the little pillow on the made bed. So it's creating a tradition for them as well, and keeping them connected, even though mommy and daddy are out of town.
Yeah. Well, Jaimie and I are traveling up the road tomorrow to Yakima. The Fraternal Order of Police is trying something new where they're going to have a date night, and they're really minimal charge for the couples. And then my wife and I are going to present some material. So I'm excited for you guys this weekend. We're excited to be doing a
I'm excited for
here in the
you.
Northwest. Hey, for folks that hadn't heard your story before, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Two ways actually. So I do have a website, which is Lindsay Talks. So LindsayTalks.com. And I also you can send a message through the portal on there, but also I have an email at Lindsay@lindsaytalks.com. And also have an Instagram, which is Officer Lindsay Talks as the handle on Instagram.
I love it. Well, for the listeners, look down in the show notes. There'll be links to all of those. Jason and Lindsay, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff, and you all have given me an awful lot of yours. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You as well.
Wow, folks, what did you think? As I said in the interview, I've had the privilege, Jaimie and I have, to listen to Jason and Lindsay talk in person, and they are great presenters. They clearly have a remarkable story, and listening to what they did to work through it, I think, is inspiring. Hey, folks, Jaimie and I want to hear from you. How are we doing here on the podcast, and how can we make it better? There's a few different ways for you to communicate back to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That will cause the next episode to come up. You can also rate and review us. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, there's 5 stars waiting on our main page. We'd really appreciate a 5-star rating if we've earned 5 stars. If we haven't earned 5 stars, keep your stars. Instead, shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know how to make it better. Future Marriage Monday topics or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once, even if we're tripping over our words. Still only once. Go out and take care of the people in your tribe. Take care of each other. God bless.